If you're a person that likes to take notes, I want to give you something that I'm recommending you jot down. This is a test. This is a test for when you have a question about how am I doing spiritually? How's my spiritual health? Am I progressing in my faith the way I ought to? Here's the question you need to ask yourself. What kind of thanksgiving level? What kind of gratitude? What's my praise towards the Lord? There's a direct correlation between how grateful you are and how close you are in your walk with the Lord. If you're not walking with Him, then you're kind of oblivious to what God's doing in your life and you have no sense of gratitude at all. If you find yourself to be a very ungrateful person, that's because you're spiritually blind to what God's benefiting you for. And so we need to ask ourselves, am I giving God His due praise? Am I a grateful person? Am I thankful in my heart for the blessings He's bestowed on me? Sometimes, let's be honest, we're the glass half empty kind of person. Don't mean to be, don't want to be, but circumstances just kind of point out it's empty. It's not where it should be. It's not what I want. But the reality is God has blessed you with half full. And so what kind of person do we choose to be? We're going to be looking at Psalm 136 this morning. And as I've told you, all these psalms were songs, and they sung them as a part of their worship. We're not sure what the tunes were like, and I'm not going to ask you to sing them this morning. But Psalm 136 was an antiphonal song. And antiphonal is a big word. If you remember when we would do responsive readings, this is a responsive reading kind of thing. And so I'm going to do the statement part, and you're going to do the response. And the response is, His love endures forever. Now, I've made it rather easy on the screen. I'm going to read the words in black. You read the words in red, okay? Now, if we don't get this right, the first couple of verses, we'll start over, okay? But it's going to be rather simple. I'm going to say, give thanks to the Lord, for He is good.
His love endures forever.
You guys are awesome. Give thanks to the God of gods.
His love endures forever.
Give thanks to the Lord of lords.
His love endures forever.
To Him who alone does great wonders.
His love endures forever.
Who by His understanding made the heavens.
His love endures forever.
Who spread out the earth upon the waters.
His love endures forever.
Who made the great lights.
His love endures forever.
The sun to govern the day.
His love endures forever.
The moon and stars to govern the night.
His love endures forever.
To Him who struck down the firstborn of Egypt.
His love endures forever.
And brought Israel out from among them.
His love endures forever.
With a mighty hand and outstretched arm.
His love endures forever.
To Him who divided the Red Sea asunder.
His love endures forever.
And brought Israel through the midst of it.
His love endures forever.
But swept Pharaoh and his army into the Red Sea.
His love endures forever.
To Him who led His people through the wilderness.
His love endures forever.
To Him who struck down great kings.
His love endures forever.
And killed mighty kings.
His love endures forever.
Shion, king of the Amorites.
His love endures forever.
And Og, the king of Bashan.
His love endures forever.
And gave their land as an inheritance.
His love endures forever.
An inheritance to His servant Israel.
His love endures forever.
He remembered us in our low estate.
His love endures forever.
And freed us from our enemies.
His love endures forever.
He gives food to every creature.
His love endures forever.
Give thanks to the God of heaven.
His love endures forever.
Isn't that awesome? He is a good, good God. And the psalmist wants us to know that in everything we give Him praise. And so we need to make sure we understand the definition of gratitude before we go any further. Gratitude is much more than an attitude. Gratitude is one of the secrets that brings us to abundant, joyful life. An abundant, joyful life. John Ortberg in his book, it all goes back to the box, in the box, gives a definition of gratitude that I think will help us. He says, gratitude is the ability to experience life as a gift. It opens us up to wonder, delight, and humility. It makes our hearts generous. It liberates us from the prison of self-preoccupation. Gratitude is not something we give to God because he wants to make sure we know how much trouble he went to over us. Gratitude is the gift God gives us and enables us to be blessed by all his other gifts. The way our taste buds enable us to enjoy the gift of food. Without gratitude, our lives degenerate into an envy, dissatisfaction, and complaints, taking what we have for granted and always wanting more. So it's a level of being satisfied with what God has given us and recognizing that it all comes from him. And it's so important for us to develop a heart that has gratitude, that we're just naturally grateful in our spiritual walk. And so if we fail to do that, then we run the risk of having the other kind of heart, the heart that is closed off, the heart that is jealous, the heart that doesn't love and doesn't recognize that God cares for us. We become that person that we have ingratitude. Our heart gets smaller and shrivels up, becomes cold day after day, and we become a miserable person. And Christians weren't meant to live like that. We were meant to live with joy in our heart. And so how do we make sure we've got that kind of heart that has thanksgiving and gratitude? How do we encourage our heart to grow in that capacity? Well, I'm going to give us 4 exercises that help us to become a more grateful person. And so the first one is we must learn to appreciate imperfect gifts. We must learn to appreciate imperfect gifts. Let me just ask you, have you ever received an imperfect gift? Somebody meant well, but it wasn't what you were thinking when you got the gift. I won't mention any names, but a previous church I was at, we would do birthday lunches. And it was a potluck kind of thing, and the birthday person got to pick their favorite dessert. My favorite dessert, I have many, but in this case I chose apple pie. And I didn't get an apple pie, I got a peach pie. Now you may say, it's pretty close. You know, they both grow on trees, they're brown. Problem is, I'm allergic to peaches. Thank you, Gideon. And so it wasn't a perfect gift for me. You know, our bodies are a gift. Who has the perfect body? There you go. All right, Mark. Yeah. All right. Who lives in a perfect house?
We do.
You guys are batting 1,000. All right. Work at the perfect job?
We do.
You didn't have, yeah, I got the perfect job. Have clothes that perfectly fit. How about you eat perfect food all the time? Sometimes it's just not perfect. Ever got the perfect haircut? Bronson, yeah. You know, I'm kind of upset. I have changed how I part my hair for the last 3 Sundays and nobody's noticed. I was parting it on the other side. Anyway, we got the perfect friend. Mason does. Awesome. Rob does. How about the perfect pastor? You got the perfect pastor? Oh, you guys are sweet. Well, the reality is we live in a fallen world and we're all fallen people, and we've got to learn to value imperfect things because our life is saturated with things that are not perfect. And so how do we deal with that? There's 2 things that help us as we become foundational in learning to cultivate a grateful heart. And first is, no matter how imperfect your life is, somebody else's life is less perfect than yours. We know that to be true, but you know, when we're having our little pity party, it's all about me. But the reality is someone else is in a worse situation than you are. This is a story, it's an old story. It comes from an insurance thing. Mythbusters even tried to duplicate it to see if it could really happen. But there was an insurance report from a guy that had an accident at work, and they wanted clarification about the things that he made on his statement, and this is how it goes. He says, I'm writing in response to requests for additional information for my insurance claim. In block 3 of the accident claim form, I wrote, trying to do the job alone as the cause of my accident. You said in your letter that I should explain that statement more fully, and I trust the following details will be sufficient. I'm a bricklayer by trade. On the date of the accident, I was working alone on the roof of a new 6-story building. When I completed my work, I discovered I had about 500 pounds of bricks left over. Rather than carrying the bricks down by hand, I decided to lower them in a barrel using a pulley, which was attached to the side of the building at the 6th floor level. Securing the rope at the ground level, I went up to the roof, swung the barrel out, loaded the bricks into it, and then I went down to the ground and untied the rope, holding it tightly to ensure slow descent of the 500 pounds of bricks. You will note in block number 22 of the claim form that my weight is 150 pounds. All right? I think we know where this is going. Due to my surprise at being jerked off the ground so suddenly, I lost my presence of mind and forgot to let go of the rope. Needless to say, I proceeded up the side of the building at a very rapid rate of speed in the vicinity of the 3rd floor. I met the barrel coming down. This explains my fractured skull and my collarbone. Slowed only slightly, I continued my rapid descent, not stopping till my fingers of my right hand were 2 knuckles deep into the pulley. By this time, I had regained my presence of mind and was able to hold tightly to the rope in spite of my pain. At approximately the same time, however, the barrel bricks hit the ground and the bottom fell out of the barrel. Devoid of the weight of the bricks, the barrel now weighed approximately 50 pounds. I refer you again to box 22, where I weigh 150 pounds. So you can imagine I began a rapid descent down. And he says that he met the barrel coming up. This accounts for the 2 fractured ankles and the lacerations on my legs and lower body. The second encounter with the barrel slowed me enough to lessen my injuries when I fell onto the pile of bricks. Fortunately, only 3 vertebrae were cracked. I'm sorry to report, however, as I lay there on the bricks in pain, unable to stand and watching the empty barrel 6 stories above me, I again lost presence of mind and let go of the rope. The empty barrel weighed more than the rope, so it proceeded to rapid descent down the side of the building, landing and breaking both of my legs. There's always somebody who has it worse off than you do. And if you can't think of anybody, think about this poor bricklayer who tried to lower 500 pounds of bricks. The second reason we need to give up on or learn how to accept imperfect gifts is because we have this illusion. We think that the popular belief is that perfect circumstances produce lasting joy. Well, it's an illusion. It's an illusion. You know, how many times do we think if we have the perfect life and the perfect house and the perfect job and the perfect everything, we're going to be perfectly happy? Well, you know what? If you get to know those people that look like they have the perfect world, their world is not any more perfect than yours. Because we live in an imperfect world. And in order for us to have grateful hearts, we've got to learn to appreciate and value imperfect gifts. So when life brings us imperfect things, we need to say thank you. When you ask your child to make their bed and there's stuff sticking out of it, you still have a grateful heart. When your husband tries to cook dinner for you and makes a mess in the kitchen, you still need to have a grateful heart. When you have an old junker of a car and it gets you to and fro, you still need to have a grateful heart. When you look in the mirror and there's more lumps and wrinkles than you care to imagine, you still need to have a grateful heart. And so we need to learn to value and appreciate the imperfections in our life. The second exercise that you and I must do so that we develop thankful hearts is we need to learn to appreciate times of anxiety and frustration. And you may say, that makes no sense at all. I don't like times of anxiety, and I certainly don't like times of frustration. But there's a direct correlation between these times of anxiety and our thankfulness. Let me give you an example. Say you find a lump somewhere in your body. You're a bit alarmed. It's not supposed to be there. You didn't notice it there before. You're wondering what it is. You go to the doctor. The doctor says, oh my, I think we need to run some tests. You're waiting anxiously. You're Googling it like crazy, talking with friends, thinking of what this could be. And all of a sudden, you're already planning your funeral. Doctor calls back in about 5 days and says, it's nothing. It's no big deal. It's benign. We're not worrying about it. Now what happens? You're grateful. Why are you grateful? It's because you went from anxiety to being thankful. And sometimes we need to embrace those anxiety, those frustration times so that we can develop and cultivate our heart of thanksgiving. Knowing this, it's all about perspective. You know, we think about this being bad and it's like it could be a whole lot worse. And so it's about having the right perspective. Tough times gives us perspective, and grateful people, thankful people learn to appreciate this. Knowing this, there was a college girl who wrote a letter to her mom and dad. This is what the letter said. She said, Dear Mom and Dad, I have so much to tell you. First, because of the fire in my dorm that was started by the student riots, I experienced temporary lung damage and had to go to the hospital. While I was there, I fell in love with an orderly. We have moved in together. I dropped out of school when I found out I was pregnant. Then he got fired because of his drinking, and we were going to move to Alaska where we might get married after the birth of the baby. She signed it, your loving daughter. And then said, P.S., none of that really happened, but I did flunk my chemistry class. And I want you to keep it in perspective. And she's right. It could be a lot worse. It is all about perspective. The other exercise we need to do to have a good, healthy, happy, grateful heart is we need to learn to express our gratitude both openly and often. We need to make sure that we express ourselves with gratitude even if we don't feel it. Express your gratitude even if you don't feel it. You know, sometimes you just don't feel it. But there's a correlation here between getting the ball rolling, start the feeling of it, and then it kind of catches up with you. C.S. Lewis said that it's a thin line between pretending to feel something and beginning to feel it. And many times we find ourselves crossing that line into really feeling that gratitude because we've let it out. Now I want us to do a simple test here. I want you to pick a number between 1 and 10, 1 the lowest, 10 the highest. You don't have to share your number. I'm not going to ask you to shout it out, but if you had to give yourself a number for how grateful you feel right now, pick that number. Everyone got it? If not, get one from your neighbor. They can assign you a number. All right, you got your number? All right. Now, I want you to think about all the things that God has done for you. How blessed you are. You all are sitting upright, have good health. You probably got enough money in your pocket to go and have lunch somewhere today. You've got a home to go to and a car that would get you there. You've got people that care about you and love you. You've got a pantry full of food. You've got probably more things in your house and in your attic and in your garage and in your shed than you ever care to use. Some of that stuff you even forgot you had. So now, what's that number? Let me just ask you this. Did it go up any? When we start thinking about it, start feeling, we get more grateful. And we think, and we're overwhelmed, actually. When you start listing it off, the goodness of God is just overwhelming. We are indeed a blessed people. And so we need to put in practice that, thinking about how good God is. Here's the fourth one. Fourth exercise for us to create a grateful heart. Devote yourself to worshiping God. Now, a lot of times when we talk about worship, we think Sunday morning. Think about it's what we're doing now. We're having worship, and indeed we are. But if Sunday morning is the only time you worship personally, you're missing a lot of opportunity to worship. Because if you recognize the goodness of God, as the goodness of God comes to you, you need to just go right into worship. Thank you, Lord, for a parking space. You're so good. Especially if you're going around the courthouse. That's a miracle right there. If you get a parking space on the first pass around the courthouse so you can get your license plate renewed, that's a miracle. But it's just those little things of the goodness of God being there in your life. And so we need to learn to worship Him. The psalmist in Psalm 136 remind us consistently. He says, give thanks to God. He said, give thanks to God. He said it in verse 1. He said it in verse 2. He said it in verse 3. And then he ended the psalm again in verse 26. Give thanks to the God of heaven. We need to just give thanks. The word give thanks means to gratefully acknowledge or to be thankfully expressed. We just need to have hearts that are thankful. The phrase praise the Lord comes from two Hebrew words. It comes from halu and yah. Yah is God, and halu means to give praise. And so that's where we get our English word hallelujah from. And it means that we just give Him praise and adoration over and over and over. And we experienced that. Wasn't it great to hear us do Psalm 136 as it was written? To hear you say, His love endures forever. You know, even if I would have said something like, I had a bad day, His love endures forever. That's our attitude of just having that continued grateful heart. People with grateful hearts worship God all the time. They acknowledge Him as the giver of every blessing of life. They are always gratefully acknowledging His goodness minute by minute, day by day. For them, worship is a lifestyle. I cannot think of any better way to express our worship and our thankfulness now than in the form of the Lord's Supper. And so I'm going to invite the deacons to come forward as they prepare the table and we give thanks to the goodness of God.